at Amundsen Davis. Can we welcome onto the stage Ngosong? Ngosong will be joined by Moronke Oyegade, who's the manager for project and asset-based finance at Afreximbank. Can we welcome Moronke onto the stage as well? Ramatu, Abdullahi, the team lead for economic principles at Decade of Gas Infrastructure. Mariah Luciano Gabriel, head of integrated gas ventures at Asharami Energy, as well as Declan Nyokoro, who is the managing director for NNPC Gas Marketing Limited. Let's give them a big round of applause as they join us on stage to begin this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Informative overview of the Nigerian gas sector. As the Honorable Minister mentioned, for many years, oil has dominated the Nigerian energy story. But today, gas is quickly taking center stage as the fuel that will support industries, as well as create new opportunities for investors. With the largest gas reserve on the African continent, Nigeria now is positioning gas as not only an energy source, but also a key tool for economic diversification. In this presentation, we are going to discuss how and why gas has become the backbone of the Nigerian energy transition, and why that should matter for investors and stakeholders like you. Now, in the interest of time, since we only have 45 minutes to get through this presentation, I will just quickly introduce the panelists. I know that some introduction has been made, but you can find your full bio in the program agenda. Again, Ms. Moronke, she is the manager and project-based finance at Afreximbank, where she does a lot of our structured finance deals. Ms. Abdullahi Ramatu, she's the team lead economic principal at the Decade of Gas, which is essentially spearheading this initiative. Maria Luciano Gabriel, she is the head of integrated gas venture at Asharami Energy Venture, a leading vertically integrated downstream company in the energy sector. And I just came to find out that she has just been named one of the 20 top women in energy under 40. So congratulations, Maria.
Thank you.
And last but not least, my older brother, whom I've come to know quite well over the past couple of days here, Mr. Declan Nwokoro, and he's the managing director at Nigerian Petroleum Company. Just to kickstart this discussion, Ms. Ramatu, since you work with the Decade of Gas, Nigeria has declared 2021 through 2030 as its Decade of Gas. Could you tell us how this initiative is transforming the natural gas sector from infrastructure to attracting investments, and what opportunities it creates for domestic and international stakeholders?
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that question. I just want to quickly say that I'm sitting in here for Mr. Ed Ubong, who is the coordinating director of the Decade of Gas, who couldn't make it at the last minute. But he does send his respects and his regrets and appreciation. So, what is the Decade of Gas? I suppose for anyone in the room who hasn't heard of it, you have heard that Nigeria is on a journey of a decade of gas, which, like the Honorable Minister mentioned, was kicked off in 2021. What it is a government and private sector collaboration, a novel way of operating, I would say, in that we have everyone in the industry at the table, and we've decided that we don't want the Decade of Gas to be another pronunciation that came to nothing. So the industry came together and said that, look, let's work together and let's see how we can achieve the ambition of making Nigeria a gas-powered economy by 2030. So beyond the timeline itself, the decade itself, there is an entity where the work is done, the analysis, the problem solving, the debottlenecking, and a sort of a coordinating nexus. And that's what I'm representing here today. And how have we looked at it? We've said, okay, if we want the aspirations to be realized by 2030, then what needs to happen? And we're looking at it around 7 main pillars, essentially. We're looking at supply, demand, infrastructure, economic principles, which is really pricing, decarbonization, capability building, and some of the liquidity issues in the gas to power value chain. It is a new era of collaboration. I think we've heard a lot of that at this conference in various ways. And that is really what the Decade of Gas represents here as well. And on that note, I'd like to pass on Mr. Ubong's specific appreciation and recognition to all of the key players sponsoring the work and carrying out the key execution actions, including His Excellency the President himself, the Honorable Minister of Petroleum Resources Gas for their excellent leadership. The Minister is our chairman and our champion. Thank you very much, sir. The Ministers of Finance and Power, the SA Energy, to the President, leaders of the regulatory agencies, NMDPRA and NUPRC, and the NCDMB, country CEOs of operator companies such as the NLNG, Shell, Chevron, Seplat, NNPCL, IPPG, Total Energies, ENI, Renaissance, ExxonMobil, NG, and all the other stakeholders. Again, I told you, it's all of the industry that has come together to make this a reality. So back to your question, Mr. Moderator. So the Decade of Gas is not just a slogan. It's already reshaping the gas sector through real projects, real reform, and liquidity interventions. Let me give you specific examples. So under the supply, what we call work stream, supply focus, the Decade of Gas Secretariat has already identified 20 priority projects that are anticipated to unlock an additional 4.6 BCF by 2030. We have had 3 FIDs that have been announced, and we expect that 2 more upstream companies are going to take FID in the coming months since the prerequisite conditions have been fulfilled. Specific examples include a high visibility one, I would say, would be the Ubeta onshore gas development, which includes upstream and associated infrastructure by the NNPC and Total, and expected to supply around 350 million scf per day to the NLNG plus associated liquids. That would be supply. For infrastructure, the Honorable Minister also mentioned that we are tracking and making sure that the projects make progress, such as the AKK, which connects the northern part of the country and connects the country a bit better. The OB3, which allows gas to be supplied to the western axis. The ELPS expansion to ensure that operators like Chevron and NEPL and ND Western get their gas delivered to off-takers in the western axis of the country and beyond, up to Ghana. Also, the midstream and downstream infrastructure, gas infrastructure fund, the MDGIF, has recently approved 122 billion to 6 indigenous companies to build gas infrastructure. These are not isolated. These reflect a pipeline of sanctioned investments by the Decade of Gas program. So if we've looked at supply and identified all those projects, where is that gas going? So we've gone over to the demand side as well, and we've identified 50 priority projects also designed to take the gas in tandem with the supply that we've unlocked. We have at least 5 FLNG projects at various stages being discussed to take some of this gas. And for pricing, work continues for us because the price of gas is quite critical, isn't it? We want to make sure we work with shareholders to ensure that gas is affordable to the users, but also a gas pricing regime that allows development that does not require subsidy. I think you've heard that in Nigeria. We've had enough of subsidies. We had to get rid of that. Cooking gas and LPG is another of our pillars, and it's very close to energy. Excuse me. It's a focal area for us to close the energy gaps that we have and health gaps for rural households. I should also note that for the first time in a long time, domestic gas delivered to the domestic market has crossed the 2 BCF threshold, and we're on track to increasing this number by addressing some of the lingering issues like liquidity challenges in the value chain. And on that gas to power liquidity issues, again, we have an entire team that's working with stakeholders to make sure that the gas to power sector works end to end. I hope I haven't taken too much of your time. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much again for that wonderful information about what the Decade of Gas is doing in terms of spearheading this initiative. I guess I turn to Mr. Declan. What investment opportunities exist in the Nigerian gas sector? You coming from the National Petroleum Gas Corporation.
Yeah, thank you, moderator, and thank you, the audience. The Nigerian gas sector provides numerous investment opportunities across the value chain, starting from the upstream, which is very critical and very, very important. We need investments in the exploration and production of gas. There is adequate demand for gas from the LNG plants, the gas to power the country. There's demand from the GBIs, the gas-based industries, and all these are anchored on additional gas production. So there's demand to back up those production. In the midstream, have opportunities for investments in additional gas processing plants. We need more plants to anchor the productions. We also have opportunities for investments in constructing transmission and distribution pipeline networks across the country. We have not been able to complete the gas master plan earlier approved about 10 years ago due to paucity of funding and investments. So we need investments to connect the commercial centers, the industrial centers and clusters in Nigeria, and also to improve the local gas demand. We also need investments in LNG terminals, storage facilities. And in the downstream, there are opportunities for constructing additional CNG motor stations across the country. With the recent removal of fuel subsidy in the country, that has made CNG very attractive to Nigerians. In the last count, have over 2 to 3 million vehicles which are converted to CNG. NNPC Limited, through NNPC Gas Marketing Limited, is open for collaboration with investors to provide or to construct additional 15 to 20 CNG stations and data stations in the country. Also have investment opportunities for LPG, and more importantly, we need investments in domestic LNG plants that will help to take gas to the stranded regions for power generation and economic activities. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. And I know, Maria, we're going to turn to you. I think Mr. Declan spoke about energy gas demand and what outlook for domestic gas demand, particularly in the power and industrial sectors, and how important are they for the commercial success of gas investments in Nigeria? And how can Nigeria balance its domestic demand with its ambition to become a regional gas hub?
Thank you very much. So when we talk about the outlook, okay, sorry, before I jump into answering the question, just a small correction. Ashrami Energy is the upstream arm of the Sahara Group, not the downstream arm. The Sahara Group is an integrated energy company that spans across the upstream, the midstream, the downstream, and the power sectors. So I'm with the upstream arm. Yeah, so going back into the question, the outlook for domestic gas demand is growing, is rapidly rising, which is what basically everybody is saying. And if you look at the statistics, for the first time, in fact, in a very long time, for the last 2 years, between 2023 and 2025, there has been a faster increase in domestic supply than there has been in export supply. I think for the last 2 years, it has risen by 17%, while export gas only rose by 15%. So you can see that there's a trending towards domestic gas demand. But you cannot talk about the outlook of domestic gas demand without talking about the power industry and talking about industries, the gas-based industries in general, because these are your anchor loads. Those are like your anchor customers. If we look at the total domestic gas supply, it's currently about 2.1 BCF. And what is required for the available power load in Nigeria is about 1.2 BCF. So that is about what, 60% already of the current gas supply. So that is a major customer for domestic gas. And then you look at the gas-based industries and they require about half of that. So between just the power industry and the gas-based industry, you have covered basically 80 to 90% of the domestic gas supplies. So if projects are going to be bankable, if projects are going to work, those sectors need to work. If you're going to be bringing your gas into the market, you need to be confident that the companies that you're bringing this gas in for are able to pay you. Sahara Group, we supply gas. We are also in the power industry. We are there in the generation, we're there in distribution. And we supply gas to our own sister companies, and we also supply gas to other power companies. And the liquidity challenges are real. You know, the liquidity challenges that we face there is a very major impediment to gas supply. I have nag wells, and I struggle to explain to my directors why I want to drill more nag wells when I'm being owed X amount of money. So, and on the other hand, the power companies, they need additional gas. They are not getting even the amount they require, like I said, 1.2 BCF, but they're only getting about 800. So they require additional gas, but who's going to make that additional investment if you're not sure that the money is going to come out? So it's something that needs to be fixed, you know. So the power industry, the liquidity challenges there need to be addressed for us to be able to meet that domestic demand outlook that we're all seeing and that the country so desperately needs. And another thing is also, how do we get the gas from where it's available to where it is needed, you know? So we have those infrastructure gaps that need to be closed. And you know, the government is definitely working assiduously on that and has been making great progress. For the first time in a very long time, there's a lot of hope around, you know, AKK, OB3, around the completion of that. And that would really change the outlook of, you know, the domestic gas supply, getting it from where it's available to where it's needed. Once you're able to expand the customer base, you will find that there's more appetite for the upstream companies to develop more of their gas resources and put the gas out there into the domestic market. And the final part of your question about balancing domestic supply with its ambition to become a regional hub, because I mean, you have you know, the West African gas pipeline, you have the Morocco pipeline that's coming up. There's all of these. With the kind of resources that Nigeria has, we don't need to be struggling whether we want to do domestic gas or whether we want to do export gas, because we can do both. And we can do both very comfortably. But it has to be domestic first. We have to take care of our own first, you know, and we just need to put in the right infrastructure in place to get the domestics working. Once that is working, there's enough volumes for export gas. I mean, right now, export gas accounts for about 35% of the gas that's being produced here. And with NLNG Train 7 and all of that coming up, there is more opportunities there as well for the export gas market to grow, and the volumes are there. So it's a good balance to have, the domestic gas to service the domestic market, to make the quality of lives of our people better, but then you also have enough for export to help with things like your forex inflows and all of that. So it's not either or. I think that we're going to be able to achieve both if we're able to get it right, and we're on the right path to getting it right.
So I'm hearing that there's tremendous opportunities and there are some challenges.
Yes.
And maybe Declan, maybe you can expand on that. Are there some barriers to natural gas investments and development? I know that our esteemed colleague has spoken about some challenges. Maybe you can expand on that.
Okay, thank you. The challenges for me, it's all tied to funding, access to fund. Due to local currency convertibility issues, high inflation, which restricts access to funding, there are funding challenges. That's why we don't have adequate gas infrastructure and these areas for investments. Secondly, there's high upfront costs for gas projects, which makes it very difficult for developers to secure funding for these projects. And thirdly, you have this issue of limited expansion of the domestic markets due to inadequate gas infrastructure across the country. We need to connect the industrial cities, hubs with adequate infrastructure to expand the demand for gas in country. Another issue is because of this inadequate gas infrastructure, the volume of gas has been taken in country is still not very high. We need more infrastructure. That will help. Thank you.
And going back to you again, Maria, you've talked about some liquidity challenges. Are there opportunities in monetizing Nigeria's vast gas reserve across the upstream and midstream segments?
Oh, I mean, there are tremendous opportunities, because anywhere that you have challenges, challenges basically equates to opportunities. It's just how you look at it. Because if there are no challenges to solve, then where there are no opportunities for you. So, as much as the challenges are, so are the opportunities. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration in the industry. Like Declan had mentioned, the cost of financing the gas infrastructures, it's very high, and gas is a long-term play. It's not something that you expect to recoup your money in the next year or in the next 2 years, and the amount of upfront financing that you need is quite high. So when you are able to collaborate with other operators, I mean, for example, now Sahara Group, we are looking at in areas where we don't have gas processing plants. Okay, is there a nearby processing plant that we could latch on to? We're in discussions with other companies like Panellists, see how we can collaborate, get our gas molecules to them, get it processed there, and get it into the market. It's a cheaper way to get your gas moving. So there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration in the industry, and then also, when you look at challenges like what Declan had mentioned also about the pricing, so you have a lot of costs that are dollar dominated, but you get your domestic gas inflow in Naira. It's a bit, not a bit, it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge, one that, we have to find a way to overcome. If there's not so much of a time lag in the payment, then that challenge becomes less of a challenge. But for now, there is, and we have to find other ways to come around it. We are looking at opportunities also whereby you have like midstream companies come together, put money together for infrastructure, do like midstream tolling, toll other upstream companies so that the prohibitive cost of the infrastructure is lessened, the burden of that is lessened on the upstream companies. So we just have to think of, more creative ways of getting this gas into the market. And I strongly believe that it is not something that we can do alone. It has to be collaboration between companies, collaboration with the government. We have to have policies that support these investments. We have to have, whether it's tax breaks, whether it's reduced tariffs, we have to have things that support all of these investments so that we can ensure that all of these opportunities that are here for us in the gas space are fully utilized.
Oh, thank you so much. And given that money could be a problem or is a problem, and Ms. Moronke, you being the only banker on the panel here, and you've had significant opportunities and experience working in the banking sector and handling a lot of infrastructure deals, how can financial institutions like Afreximbank support the development of Nigeria's gas sector through financing initiatives, particularly in the context of value addition and clean, just transition era?
So thank you very much, Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. So let me start by emphasizing on the fact that Afreximbank as a bank, as a DFI, is heavily invested in the energy sector across Africa. In recent years, Afreximbank has availed over $34 billion to the energy sector across Africa. Nigeria is a heavy beneficiary of some of these facilities. So to your question, I would like to look at it from a value chain perspective. There are three value chain windows in the gas sector in Nigeria: the upstream, which deals with exploration and production; the midstream investment window, which deals with transportation, gas processing, and storage; and then the downstream, which deals with marketing, sales, and essentially moving gas from the midstream sector to the end users. Over the past years, I know that Afreximbank as a bank has heavily invested in, by way of debt, in projects supporting Nigeria LNG, including the ongoing Train 7, NLNG Train 7 project. And in addition to that, the first floating LNG project that is currently ongoing in Nigeria, UTM FLNG, Afreximbank is heavily invested in that as well. One of the things we did, or one of Afreximbank initiatives to support that project, was to create a project preparatory financing for that project. And essentially, what was this for? It was to handhold the client from the beginning of the process to ensure that the contractual framework was tight, the technical assistance required by the client was heavily supported, the studies required to provide good level of comfort to potential investors were also well supported. And currently, that has yielded a lot of fruits because we can see interest from international banks as well as local banks to fund this particular project. So essentially what the bank has done is to prepare that project to see the light of day. Now, back to what I was saying on the upstream sector. So the upstream sector, the upstream gas sector in the gas industry is heavily supported right now because the process of gas exploration is somehow intertwined with that of crude oil. But what we see happen today is that when oil is extracted, gas is flared. This creates two major problems that we will be solving if we focus on investing in gas infrastructure. What are these two problems? One is the problem of environmental pollution, and the second one is the problem around wasting gas that could easily have been monetized. And that is loss of economic value. So what we are doing as Afreximbank, or what we have done as a bank, is one, we have created a desk called Climate Finance Desk. And this desk essentially focuses on monetization and commercialization of gas and helping the private sector operators within that industry with financing. And it's not just about supporting with financing, it's about handholding them through the entire value chain, like I mentioned, from exploration to development, and of course to processing of this gas, and then to transporting them and marketing, sales, and all of that to the end users. So that's what Afreximbank is doing. Secondly, we created a couple of years ago, we realized that there are some gaps because based on trend, only 1 out of 10 infrastructure projects actually get to commissioning, meaning that somewhere down the chain, there are disruptions that impacts the progress of those projects. So the bank then decided to create a project preparatory financing desk to support and ensure that the requirements to get projects from conceptualization stage to commissioning, to implementation is achieved by providing technical assistance. So yes, Afreximbank is heavily invested in this. And I need to also add that for banks like Afreximbank and commercial banks, other multilateral financial institutions, it is very essential that we pay attention to this, because gas is the next oil, and we should take full benefit of this for Africa. Because these are resources that we have on the ground. Until we bring them out, process them, and they become useful to us, it's a complete waste. So yeah, essentially, we need to pay attention to this, and there are initiatives by Afreximbank to support this.
And are there de-risking strategies that Afreximbank is deploying to mitigate some of these risks that you've just mentioned, and to attract more private sector investment in the sector?
Absolutely. Okay, so we have quite a number of instruments. One of them is our guarantee instrument. One key challenge with foreign direct investment, we've been able to attract foreign direct investment and equity to give a balanced or optimal capital structure, is around political instability in some part of Africa. So part of the de-risking strategy that we adopt is to issue political risk insurance to provide comfort around. To provide comfort to foreign direct investors, and to be able to attract investments to support the gas sector. Beyond the political risk insurance, we also offer credit insurance. We offer products like the letters of credit to support payments, standby letter of credit to support payments in the to support payments within the value chain. Then I already spoke about the project preparations, the project preparatory financing provided by Afreximbank. And I think on a final note, I'll speak about our advisory arm. So we have a department in the bank that provides advisory and capital market services. Essentially, they provide advisory to support because the major issue with project finance is, one, having the right set of documents, bankable documents, right, to support your project. Two is having having conducted studies and being able to demonstrate that the project is viable. I am very certain that commercial banks, development finance institutions, ECAs are very willing to fund projects that are viable. But what we see is that we see gaps in terms of technical knowledge, in terms of coordination and making adequate arrangements to put those projects together and make them bankable. What we have done as a bank is to create a department that would handhold the private sector clients and take them through the entire process to ensure that those documents that will attract financing for you are there. The technical knowledge that needs to be displayed to attract equity and debt financing are available, and essentially take you through the process and also source for equity funding for the projects, debt funding for the project, and see you through to implementation stage. So those are critical elements. And I also wanted to point out that we undergo a rigorous due diligence process. And what this due diligence process is meant to achieve is to identify the key risks in specific projects. Once those risks are identified, then the next step is to allocate those risks to specific parties within the project finance cycle that should take care of those risks. Those risks are well mitigated, and because the risks are well mitigated, it then makes the project bankable because it becomes attractive to equity investors as well as debt investors.
I think that's great. And maybe we could get back to the decade of gas again. I know that recently Nigeria has committed to net zero by 2060. But yeah, we all know that here in Africa and in Nigeria, in mostly the rural areas, lots of people still don't have access to energy. So what is Decade of Gas doing to help Nigeria strike that balance between achieving those goals and still providing energy for households and small, medium enterprises?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Moderator. So for us, it's quite a pragmatic approach. For us in Nigeria, we're going to decarbonize, but we're going to do it while we lift millions of people out of poverty, right? So the Decade of Gas is helping to bridge the gap between our net zero by 2060 ambitions and the urgent need for access to clean fuels through advocacy for targeted policies that promote cleaner fuels like LPG to homes and SMEs, and through awareness that the use of gas isn't exclusively for large-scale power generation projects. And gas can serve as a replacement fuel also for traditional diesel and petrol that we see. So when we talk about harnessing Nigeria's large gas resources for economic development, we don't just mean mega LNG projects and GBIs. We mean that every Nigerian should get a benefit from the gas resource. So how can we do this? Through two ways, really, one of which is enablement of access to LPG, and the other one is through fuel switching. So for LPG access, under the Decade of Gas, the federal government has prioritized access to LPG as a cleaner fuel for homes and SMEs to previously underserved areas, particularly peri-urban and rural areas. And this is helping to shift the demand away from the more polluting alternatives like biomass and kerosene. So specifically to this, the government has embarked on a 5 million household target by 2030. So the decade is 2021 to 2030. And it is a sort of a pilot program that addresses the initial adoption costs of cylinders. So it is a cylinder distribution program that looks at 1 million a year until 2030, trying to transition 5 million homes by 2030. The Honorable Minister has embarked on a series of sort of regional kickoffs of this program, which are more sort of awareness and ceremonial to just sort of get people on board where some of these cylinders have been distributed. However, the real work is the 5 million. Those numbers were just small and ceremonial, like I said. So it's targeted mostly at women and youth. There is a training element. You don't put a cylinder in people's hands if you haven't taught them how to use it, and that will ultimately, obviously, that can go wrong and affect your adoption if we have accidents that are human element led. So we try to eliminate that. And in planning the main sort of state-by-state nationwide rollout, which is taking off soon, we're taking learnings from other countries that have done similar things. We understand that the full subsidy model might not be the way to go. However, we do want to get some of those cylinders out, get them to actually try it. We have some of these limiting thoughts where people say, no, gas is for rich people, or gas is dangerous, I don't even want to try it. But when you give a woman a filled cylinder so she can go home and use it that day, and you've taught her how to use it, she never really wants to go back to firewood. And that's one step. Now they're actually open to it. So that's around the specific decade of gas grassroots penetration program. The MDGIF, like I mentioned earlier, has approved 122 billion naira to 6 indigenous companies for gas infrastructure. A lot of that is LPG-related infrastructure, including mini LPG plants, casing, piping, storage facilities that feed into LPG cylinders, and small-scale bulk LPG systems. We have some states also in Nigeria that have partnered with private LPG off-takers to deploy local cylinder-to-home schemes. And these are subsidized also, and community LPG centers, reducing upfront costs. So these initiatives increase household adoption of LPG, which we consider to be a cleaner fuel. And we want to make sure that this energy is not just being used in the big cities, but in rural areas as well. The second approach is fuel switching, which we mentioned. So for many SMEs in Nigeria and commercial users, they typically depend on diesels, generators. And so under the decade of gas, we're making sure that these users are able to switch to cleaner gas power. I'm just looking at the time. For example, also in the transport sector, this looks like the adoption of CNG, and the government did launch a PCNG initiative of CNG adoption for transportation. And a lot of bus fleets and taxis in some cities are being converted, including a lot of actual private user adoption is what we've seen. So the shift yields improvements in local air quality. And the estimate is that when an SME switches from a 200 kVA diesel generator to gas, we reduce CO2 emissions by 25 to 35%. And then you do so at a significant cost reduction. Diesel is more expensive than gas. So why does this approach balance decarbonization and access, like your question said? So undoubtedly, we are on the journey, but we're doing it in a way that works for us. We want to make sure that the decarbonization happens. We're doing it through gas, which is considered a clean transition fuel. And so yes, gas is cleaner, far lower sulfur dioxide and particulate matter than other pollutants. Scalable infrastructure, so a lot of the mini LPG pipelines that are put in place are also capable of supporting hydrogen in future. So in this way, we are future-proofing as well. So we're doing the transition now, but we're future-proofing for the net zero commitments that we have. This way, it's inclusive. So by targeting SMEs and households, not just big industrials, the initiative ensures that clean energy reaches those currently excluded. So that's access. Market incentives and cost parity. Gas is not only considered cleaner, it's actually cheaper. So it makes it more accessible. And it makes the case for switching more financially compelling. And finally, investor confidence. with clearer policies and infrastructure, investors see markets in LPG, mini grids, and CNG fleets as big opportunities, catalyzing capital into decarbonizing. So in conclusion, so through LPG rollout and funding, through gas pipeline expansions, through incentives and gas-based generation and transport fuel conversion, the decade of gas is delivering cleaner energy access today while laying a foundation for Nigeria's transition to net zero. Thank you.
Well, what I'm hearing is that the Nigerian gas sector is ready to soar. It's about to soar. There are some challenges, but I think there's tremendous opportunities for lots of investors. And it's through collaboration with the government, I think, that there's a lot of opportunities and a lot to be achieved. Thank you so much again for joining this presentation. I hope that you all found it to be of value, so thank you.